Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. Emily Parker had always tried her best to keep everything in order. She cooked, cleaned, and made sure the house looked perfect. But lately, nothing seemed to be enough. Her husband, Jason, who everyone thought was a perfect businessman and husband, had started saying things that cut deeper than she expected. One evening, after she had spent hours preparing dinner, he looked at her with a smirk and said, "You're just too dirty for this house." Emily froze. She couldn't understand how someone she loved could speak to her that way. The words kept echoing in her mind for days, making her question everything about herself and their marriage. Emily tried to ignore it, thinking maybe he was stressed or just having a bad day. But it kept happening. Jason would make comments about her clothes, her hair, even how she organized the kitchen. She felt humiliated, especially because he sometimes said these things in front of friends or when she had family over. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. She started feeling small in her own home, wondering if she had made a huge mistake in marrying him. Through all of this, Rosa, the housemaid, watched quietly. Rosa had been with the family for years and knew more about the household than anyone realized. She never spoke too much, but she noticed things others didn't. She saw the way Jason's eyes would shift when Emily entered a room, the little smirks when he found a fault to point out, and the moments of quiet despair Emily tried to hide. Rosa understood Emily's pain without Emily needing to explain anything. One afternoon, Emily found herself crying in the living room, the weight of Jason's words pressing down on her. Rosa quietly came in with a cup of tea, sat beside her, and simply said, "You don't deserve this, Emily. You're worth more than his words." It wasn't just comfort, it was the first time someone really acknowledged the way Jason had been treating her. Emily looked at Rosa, realizing she might not be entirely alone in this. Days passed, and Emily started noticing small inconsistencies in Jason's behavior. There were times he would leave the house without telling her, unusual phone calls he tried to hide, and secretive notes she accidentally found. Something about their marriage felt off, and it wasn't just his cruel words. Emily couldn't explain it yet, but a quiet suspicion began to grow in her. Rosa became her silent support. She never judged, never overstepped, but her presence gave Emily a sense of strength. Emily started listening to her own instincts again, realizing she didn't have to accept humiliation as normal. Something had to change, but she wasn't ready yet. All she knew was that Jason's words had opened a door, one that would eventually lead Emily to see the truth and maybe, just maybe, reclaim her life. Emily began noticing that Jason's behavior was getting worse. It wasn't just the little comments at home anymore, he started making snide remarks when friends or family were around. At a small dinner with his colleagues, he whispered in front of Emily, "Maybe if you paid more attention, things would be cleaner." Emily felt the sting of humiliation, her face burning as everyone looked at her. She had spent years building a life with him, supporting his career, managing the household, and standing by him, and now she felt completely betrayed. The more Emily observed, the more she realized Jason was hiding things. He would stay out late, claiming work emergencies, but sometimes he didn't answer his phone or seemed unusually secretive. Bills and financial statements didn't add up. Emily noticed transfers in their accounts that she hadn't authorized, and strange receipts that hinted at unknown expenses. The house, which used to feel safe, now seemed full of secrets. Every unanswered question made her heart sink. Feeling isolated, Emily turned to Rosa more than ever. She found comfort in Rosa's calm presence, someone who listened without judgment and seemed to understand without needing an explanation. Emily began sharing the small things she noticed, Jason's odd schedules, his sudden defensiveness, and the little lies she caught him in. Rosa didn't give advice outright, but she offered subtle guidance. Sometimes it was a question like, "Did you check that receipt?" or a quiet remark that made Emily think twice and pay attention to details she might have overlooked. Emily started keeping notes, writing down inconsistencies and odd behaviors. She realized she had been ignoring the signs for too long, convincing herself that maybe she was overreacting. Now it became clear, Jason's coldness wasn't temporary stress, he was deliberately hiding parts of his life from her. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was creeping into every corner of their life together. At the same time, Emily began noticing how Jason treated Rosa differently than he treated her. Rosa remained polite but firm, never allowing him to make snide remarks or cross boundaries. Emily saw the quiet strength Rosa carried, and it gave her a small sense of hope. Maybe she didn't have to endure everything silently anymore. The house felt tense. Every word, every glance between Emily and Jason carried weight. Emily's humiliation grew, but so did her awareness. She began planning internally, thinking carefully about what she would do if she discovered the full truth. Rosa's quiet encouragement helped her realize that she didn't need to confront Jason recklessly, she could gather information first and prepare herself. With each passing day, the pieces started falling into place. Emily's trust in Jason had been deeply shaken, but her sense of clarity was growing. She knew the path ahead would require patience and careful observation. For the first time in a long while, she felt a small spark of determination. Betrayal had entered her life, but she wasn't ready to let it define her. Something needed to change, and Emily was beginning to understand that she might have the strength to make it happen. Emily reached a point where she felt completely broken. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by unannounced. Jason, instead of being polite, chose that moment to belittle her. He laughed and said, "Look at this mess, you're careless and too dirty to keep a proper home." Emily felt her chest tighten, humiliation washing over her. She could barely meet the neighbor's eyes, wishing she could disappear. After the neighbor left, she ran to her room, locking the door, and let the tears fall. Sitting on her bed, Emily felt trapped and small. Years of effort, loyalty, and care seemed invisible to Jason. She asked herself over and over if marrying him had been a huge mistake. How had someone she trusted so deeply become the source of such pain? Doubt swirled in her mind, leaving her confused and emotionally drained. Every memory of happier times now felt tainted by Jason's cruelty. She wondered if she had misjudged his character all along. Through her sadness, Rosa quietly came in and sat beside her. She didn't offer dramatic advice or tell Emily what to do. Instead, she simply said things that made Emily think, "You've done everything right, Emily. Don't let his words change how you see yourself." Rosa's calm voice and gentle presence planted small seeds of confidence. She reminded Emily of the truth she had been overlooking, that Jason's words were not a reflection of her value but of his own flaws. Slowly, Emily began paying more attention to Jason's stories and explanations. She remembered things that didn't quite add up, dates he claimed to be at work, errands that seemed unnecessary, explanations for missing money. As she pieced these together, she realized he had been lying more often than she had noticed. Each inconsistency was another small confirmation that his behavior wasn't just cruel, it was dishonest. The combination of heartbreak and realization left Emily feeling both vulnerable and alert. She understood that Jason's insults were designed to control her, to make her doubt herself, and perhaps to hide his own misdeeds. Rosa's quiet support reminded her she didn't have to face this alone, and that gave her a small but growing sense of strength. For the first time, Emily saw clearly that she needed to pay attention to what was real and what was manipulation. She started observing Jason more carefully, noting every lie and every contradiction. The pain was still there, raw and heavy, but now it was mixed with determination. Emily realized that while she couldn't change Jason's behavior, she could prepare herself. By the end of that day, Emily made a silent promise: she would no longer let humiliation define her. She would gather the truth, find clarity, and regain control of her life. Rosa's steady presence made her believe she could. The emotional low point was crushing, but it also became the moment when Emily's quiet strength began to grow, readying her for the path ahead. Emily had begun paying closer attention to Jason's habits, and one day she stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold. While organizing papers in the study, she found financial documents she had never seen before. Account statements showed money being transferred out of their joint accounts without her knowledge. At first, she thought it might be a mistake, but as she looked closer, she noticed patterns, regular transfers, amounts that didn't make sense, and receipts for places she had never visited. Her hands shook as she opened a folder labeled with a name she didn't recognize. Inside were notes, hotel receipts, and messages that clearly indicated Jason had been seeing someone else. Emily felt a wave of betrayal unlike anything she had experienced before. The man she had trusted with her heart and her life had been secretly planning to leave her. Rage and heartbreak collided inside her, leaving her feeling dizzy, sick, and more awake than ever at the same time. Rosa noticed Emily's tense expression and quietly asked if she needed help. Emily hesitated but then showed her what she had found. Rosa didn't gasp or judge, instead, she nodded knowingly. "I had a feeling he was hiding something," Rosa said softly. "I noticed little things for months. If you want, I can help you collect more proof. You need to be careful, but you deserve to know the truth." Her calm words gave Emily a sense of direction. She realized she wasn't alone, and that someone could help her navigate this betrayal. Together, Emily and Rosa began gathering evidence carefully. They copied documents, took note of suspicious transactions, and tracked the inconsistencies in Jason's stories. Each piece of proof made Emily's anger grow, but it also strengthened her resolve. She understood that this wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about protecting herself and reclaiming control of her life. Emily felt a mix of emotions. The heartbreak stung deeply, she had invested years in a marriage that now seemed built on lies. Yet alongside the pain, a spark of determination grew. She realized that knowing the truth gave her power. For the first time in months, Emily felt like she could act, like she could face Jason with clarity instead of fear. Rosa's steady presence reminded her that careful planning would allow her to confront the situation on her terms. The discovery of Jason's betrayal changed everything. Emily understood that she had been blind to his manipulations for too long, but she wasn't going to make that mistake again. She would gather evidence, plan her next steps, and reclaim her life. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt the beginnings of control and confidence returning, even amidst the heartbreak and rage. By the end of the day, Emily was no longer just a woman hurt by cruel words, she was a woman who knew the truth and was ready to take the steps necessary to protect herself and demand justice. The shock of betrayal had fueled her determination, and she was no longer willing to let Jason's lies dictate her life. Emily and Rosa spent hours quietly talking in the kitchen, away from Jason's ears. They began making a careful plan. Rosa suggested that Emily document everything, every secret transfer, every lie, and every suspicious behavior Jason had shown. Emily knew this wouldn't be easy, but she realized that having solid proof would give her power. She started organizing the documents, receipts, and notes into a system that made sense. At the same time, Emily began paying more attention to Jason's daily routines. She noticed small things, how he tried to avoid questions about money, the way he fumbled when she mentioned certain dates, and how defensive he became over minor issues. Each observation gave her more insight into his behavior. She started testing him in small ways, asking pointed questions and noting his reactions. Jason remained unaware of the depth of Emily's awareness, which gave her confidence. Emily also started regaining small pieces of herself. She no longer flinched at his sarcastic comments or tried to hide when he mocked her. In arguments, she stood her ground, calmly pointing out inconsistencies without revealing that she already knew the bigger truth. Each small victory reminded her that she wasn't powerless and that she could face him without fear. Rosa continued to offer quiet guidance. She didn't tell Emily exactly what to do, but her questions and suggestions helped Emily think strategically. "What would happen if you showed this to someone he respects?" Rosa asked one afternoon. Emily considered it and realized that exposing Jason's hypocrisy in front of people who mattered to him could make a difference. It wasn't about revenge in a cruel sense, it was about standing up for herself and reclaiming her dignity. As the days passed, Emily's confidence grew. She felt stronger and more in control than she had in months. The house no longer felt suffocating, instead, it became a place where she could quietly prepare for the moment when she would finally confront Jason. She was careful, patient, and deliberate. Every piece of evidence she gathered, every lie she caught him in, was a step closer to taking back what he had tried to take from her. Despite the tension, Emily remained calm in front of Jason. She smiled, joked, and acted as if nothing had changed. He continued his usual behavior, thinking she was unaware, while she quietly built her strategy. The contrast between his arrogance and her growing confidence made her feel empowered. By the end of this period, Emily had a plan and a sense of control. She knew when and how she would reveal the truth, and she felt ready to face whatever consequences came her way. For the first time since discovering Jason's betrayal, Emily felt that the balance had begun to shift. She was no longer just a victim, she was preparing for her comeback, and nothing would stop her from reclaiming her life. Emily decided it was time to test Jason, but she knew she had to be careful. She started asking him simple questions about money and schedules, ones that seemed casual but were actually pointed. "Jason, I noticed this transfer last month, what was that for?" she asked one evening while they were having dinner. Jason's smile faltered for a moment, and he gave a vague answer. Emily pressed a little more, calmly pointing out small inconsistencies she had noticed in his stories. Jason's defensiveness grew. He tried to maintain control, raising his voice slightly and accusing Emily of overthinking. But Emily stayed composed. She didn't yell, didn't cry, and didn't beg. Instead, she let the evidence speak for itself, subtly mentioning documents and dates she had carefully recorded. Each time Jason tried to twist the story, she countered with facts he couldn't deny. The atmosphere in the house began to shift. Jason, who had always carried himself as the one in charge, started looking uneasy. He had never seen Emily stand up to him like this. Her confidence, calm tone, and clear knowledge of the truth unsettled him. For the first time, he realized that his control over her was slipping. Rosa continued to support Emily quietly from the background. She didn't interfere, but her presence gave Emily a sense of strength and reassurance. Emily felt that she wasn't alone and that she had someone she could trust completely. Rosa's calm guidance helped Emily maintain her composure, even when Jason's anger rose. As the confrontation went on, Emily noticed a change in herself too. She no longer felt small or weak. The humiliation Jason had caused in the past had not disappeared entirely, but it no longer had power over her. She was beginning to understand that her value didn't depend on his approval. The more she questioned him and caught him in lies, the more her confidence grew. Emily also started thinking about the bigger picture. This wasn't just about proving him wrong or getting angry, it was about justice and reclaiming her dignity. She imagined a future where Jason could no longer manipulate her, where she could expose his hypocrisy without stooping to cruelty. Every lie he tried to hide now became a tool she could use to regain what he had tried to take from her. By the end of the evening, Emily felt a quiet victory. Jason was still her husband in name, but his power over her had weakened. She saw clearly that she could face him, challenge him, and protect herself. The first confrontation didn't need to be dramatic, it was subtle, calculated, and effective. For the first time in months, Emily felt in control of her life again, and the thought of standing up for herself fully filled her with determination. Emily's careful observations and Rosa's quiet guidance led to a shocking discovery. One evening, while going through documents and notes she had collected over weeks, she found evidence of Jason meeting another woman. There were receipts for dinners, hotel stays, and messages that made it clear he had been manipulating her for years. The realization hit Emily hard, every apology, every excuse, every cruel comment had been part of a pattern to control her and hide his betrayal. Instead of panicking, Emily felt a surge of clarity. She discussed the situation with Rosa, who suggested a plan that wouldn't involve direct confrontation but would expose Jason's hypocrisy. They needed to let the truth show itself naturally, in a way that would be undeniable and visible to people who mattered in their circle. Emily agreed, understanding that subtlety would make the exposure more powerful. The opportunity came when a small gathering of mutual friends was planned. Emily quietly prepared, making sure the evidence she had gathered could be noticed without appearing staged. She positioned herself in a way that allowed her friends to see documents and messages casually, letting the truth emerge naturally. Jason, as usual, acted confident, unaware that Emily had orchestrated the moment. As the evening progressed, small things began to unravel for Jason. Friends noticed inconsistencies in his stories, glimpses of evidence surfaced, and his attempts to control the conversation only drew more attention to him. Emily remained calm, composed, and even cheerful, giving no hint that she was behind the unfolding situation. She watched quietly as Jason's carefully constructed image began to crack, and for the first time, he felt a loss of control. Jason's frantic attempts to cover up or explain away the evidence only made matters worse. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by nervous gestures, stammering, and obvious frustration. He tried to redirect attention and charm his friends, but it didn't work. Emily, standing calmly beside Rosa, felt a strange but powerful sense of empowerment. She wasn't shouting, confronting, or seeking revenge in anger, she was simply letting the truth reveal itself while maintaining her dignity. For Emily, this was the turning point. The humiliation she had suffered for so long was beginning to reverse. She realized that Jason's power over her depended on secrecy and lies. Once those were exposed, he could no longer manipulate or control her. Seeing him struggle in front of people who had respected him all along gave Emily a quiet satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from finally reclaiming her sense of justice and self-worth. By the end of the night, Emily felt stronger than she had in years. She had witnessed firsthand that planning, patience, and calm determination could shift the balance of power. Jason had been exposed, and Emily's confidence was rising with every passing moment. For the first time, she tasted true empowerment, knowing that she could protect herself and face betrayal with intelligence, dignity, and strength. Emily felt ready. She had collected enough proof, observed Jason's every move, and planned carefully with Rosa. Now it was time for the confrontation. She chose a moment when close family members would be present, ensuring Jason couldn't twist the story or manipulate anyone. Rosa quietly helped Emily prepare, arranging the documents and notes so they could be presented naturally without seeming staged. When Jason arrived, confident as always, Emily stayed calm. She waited for the right moment and then began speaking, presenting facts one by one. She showed the secret financial transfers, the receipts for hotel stays, and messages that proved he had been seeing another woman. She spoke steadily, without shouting or crying, letting the evidence speak louder than words ever could. Jason's face shifted from surprise to panic as Emily laid everything out. He tried to explain, tried to excuse his actions, but each lie was met with proof. The family, who had always seen him as perfect, started to realize the truth. His facade of control, charm, and authority crumbled in front of their eyes. Emily remained composed, speaking only the truth and standing tall. Rosa's presence was crucial. She stayed close, subtly supporting Emily and making sure the evidence was noticed by everyone in the room. She didn't interfere, but her quiet guidance helped Emily remain focused and confident. Emily realized how much her strength had grown since the days when Jason's words had made her feel small and worthless. Jason tried to regain control, raising his voice and blaming Emily for reading into things. But this time, his attempts fell flat. Emily calmly countered each argument with facts, exposing not only his lies but the cruelty behind them. She didn't yell or humiliate him aggressively, her calm, composed demeanor made his guilt and deceit even more obvious. The contrast between Emily's poise and Jason's desperation was striking. Family members started asking questions, pointing out inconsistencies, and expressing shock at the truth. Jason, who had always been able to manipulate people into believing his version of reality, now found himself powerless. Emily's strategy had worked perfectly. By letting the truth speak in front of witnesses, she ensured he couldn't control the narrative anymore. By the end of the confrontation, Emily felt a sense of closure and empowerment she hadn't known in years. Jason sat in stunned silence, stripped of the control he had so carefully maintained. Emily, on the other hand, had regained not just her dignity, but the respect of those around her. She realized that standing firm, speaking the truth, and staying calm in the face of betrayal was the most powerful form of revenge. For Emily, this moment marked a turning point. She had confronted the betrayal, exposed the lies, and reclaimed her life. She felt stronger, more confident, and certain that she would no longer allow anyone to undermine her worth. The emotional payback was complete, not through anger, but through truth, courage, and quiet strength. After the confrontation, Emily felt a sense of relief she hadn't experienced in years. The weight of Jason's lies and betrayal no longer hung over her. She began to focus on rebuilding her life, both emotionally and financially. She reviewed their finances carefully, ensuring that her assets were secure and that she had full control over her own future. For the first time, she felt independent and capable of making decisions without fear or doubt. Jason attempted to apologize, claiming he had made mistakes and promising to change. Emily listened calmly but understood that forgiveness didn't mean returning to the old patterns that had caused her so much pain. She realized that trusting him again would only put her in a vulnerable position. Instead, she set clear boundaries, making it obvious that she would no longer allow manipulation or disrespect in her life. Rosa remained by her side throughout this process, not as a crutch, but as a trusted confidant. She offered support when Emily needed it and reminded her to stay focused on her goals. Rosa's quiet presence was a steady reminder that Emily didn't have to face challenges alone, and that true loyalty came from people who genuinely cared. As Emily settled into this new chapter, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. Betrayal had the power to hurt deeply and shake one's sense of self, but resilience and careful planning could rebuild stronger than before. She understood that strength wasn't about revenge or retaliation, it was about reclaiming dignity, protecting oneself, and making deliberate choices that fostered growth. Emily began to invest time in herself, pursuing things she had neglected during the years of turmoil. She focused on hobbies, personal goals, and reconnecting with friends who truly supported her. With each step, she felt her confidence grow. She no longer relied on Jason's approval or validation, her sense of self-worth was restored from within. She also realized the importance of awareness. Paying attention to red flags, trusting her instincts, and documenting actions had given her the power to take control. Emily understood that empowerment wasn't sudden, it came from small, consistent efforts to protect and assert oneself. Over time, the house, which had once felt like a place of stress and fear, became a sanctuary again. Emily created an environment of peace, clarity, and order, where she could think clearly and live freely. The lessons from her betrayal stayed with her, but they no longer caused pain, they became tools for growth and resilience. By the end of this period, Emily felt whole again. She had regained control, built boundaries, and strengthened her independence. The emotional closure wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming her life and dignity. Emily knew she was stronger, wiser, and ready to face the future on her own terms, with Rosa as a loyal friend by her side and the confidence to protect herself from anyone who tried to undermine her again. Emily felt a freedom she hadn't known in years. The pain and humiliation she had suffered were now behind her, replaced by a sense of independence and confidence that grew stronger each day. She no longer needed Jason's approval or validation, her self-respect was fully restored. Every decision she made, every step she took, reflected the strength she had gained through patience, observation, and determination. Jason, on the other hand, was left in a position of regret. He realized too late that his lies, manipulation, and cruelty had cost him the respect and love he once took for granted. But Emily didn't need to gloat or seek revenge. Her victory wasn't in seeing him fall, it was in reclaiming her life and dignity. She had outgrown the fear, humiliation, and control he had once held over her. Rosa remained an essential part of Emily's life. More than a housemaid, she had become a trusted friend, a source of guidance, and a quiet anchor through the chaos. Rosa's loyalty and support reminded Emily that strength often comes from those who stand by you without seeking recognition. Together, they had navigated the betrayal, planned carefully, and seen justice quietly unfold. Emily reflected on everything she had endured. The journey had been painful, filled with heartbreak, doubt, and anger. But she understood that each challenge had prepared her for this moment of empowerment. She had learned that betrayal can shake you, but resilience, patience, and careful strategy can rebuild you stronger than before. She had turned humiliation into clarity, manipulation into insight, and anger into purposeful action. With her life now fully her own, Emily focused on the future. She pursued goals she had put aside, embraced opportunities without hesitation, and surrounded herself with people who valued and respected her. She no longer feared judgment or criticism, knowing her worth was determined by herself, not by anyone who had once tried to belittle her. The experience had taught her important lessons about trust, vigilance, and self-preservation. She realized that betrayal often hides in the everyday, in small lies and secret actions, and that awareness is essential to protect oneself. Emily's strength came not from anger, but from understanding, strategy, and quiet courage. Looking back, Emily felt proud of how far she had come. The woman who had once been humiliated and made to feel too dirty was now confident, respected, and free. She smiled at Rosa and whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "I was called too dirty, but I left the filth behind and stepped into the life they tried to take from me." In that moment, Emily understood the real power of resilience and self-respect. She had reclaimed her life, dignity, and confidence, showing that even in the face of betrayal, one could rise, grow stronger, and walk forward with pride. The story ended not with bitterness, but with empowerment, courage, and a reminder that true strength comes from within.